Okay, so yeah, might feel like a lot of theory to take in, but I promise the hands-on is coming soon. Anyway, in this module we mentioned the two major services of a swarm cluster. One, the discovery service. This is a key value store for maintaining cluster state and cluster config. And it needs to be available, right, to be queried and searched and all that kind of stuff. Second, there was the swarm manager, the process that's responsible for managing the entire cluster. It's a daemon process that implements, well, I was nearly going to say the Docker Remote API, but actually it implements the Swarm API, which, if we remember, is mostly compatible with the Docker Remote API. Which is all just a bunch of technical jargon that says if you already talk Docker, you pretty much talk Swarm. Can I say the difference between British English and American English? Maybe, but don't take that too far. We did say though that in a swarm cluster, instead of sending commands directly to individual nodes in the cluster, we send them to the swarm manager, which in turn runs them against the appropriate nodes in the cluster. So, just for crystal clarity, pretty much any client that supports the Docker Remote API is gonna work with Swarm. Now we said that both of these services can be configured for high availability, so the discovery service and the manager, yeah? And in the real world, especially if you're using Swarm in production, you really want to do that. And both of them can run as containers as well, but they don't have to. You can just as easily run them as VMs or whatever. Right, then we talked about filtering and scheduling. Filtering lets us say things like, only run this container on nodes with this particular storage driver or this particular execution driver. And that's great and all, but the better part of it was it lets us tag nodes with whatever we want, right? So arbitrary things like location, environment, zone, hardware config, basically anything we like. Then it lets us filter against those tags, and I love it, right? This is where the action is in my books. Then we wrap things up with a discussion on scheduling strategies. There's random, which at least in my opinion, right, is just there to make up the numbers. Spread, that's the default and it tries to balance containers evenly across the cluster. And bin pack, that's the other, which tries to max out each node before using another. And I reckon that's the theory down. I reckon we're good to start building stuff. So, coming up in the next module, we're going to build some infrastructure. Now let me caveat this, right? This is the stuff that we'll build Swarm on top of. So we're not building Swarm just yet, but this is vital stuff, right? The stuff underneath Swarm, like VMs and Docker hosts and the likes. And as we go, we'll be discussing some important infrastructure stuff too, and it won't be such a long module either. So, see you there.